The mysterious signal. The Seraphim was silent as it drifted through the dark, empty space. Commander Imani stared out of the control room window, watching the stars twinkle like distant diamonds. The ship had been on its current mission for weeks, and there was nothing to report. No new discoveries, no signs of alien life, just endless space. Then, out of nowhere, a strange sound broke the silence. It was soft at first, like a faint hum coming from deep within the ship. Imani paused, her fingers hovering over the control panel. Was it a malfunction? She quickly ran a scan, but the ship's systems showed nothing unusual. Yet the sound continued, growing louder by the second. It seemed to be coming from the direction of the communication array. "Rahim," she called, turning to her second-in-command, Lieutenant Rahim, who was sitting at a nearby station. "Check the comms. Do you hear that?" Rahim leaned forward, listening closely. His brow furrowed. "Yes, I hear it. But it's not from any normal transmission. It's different." Imani stood up from her chair, walking over to his station. The sound had become a constant hum now, like a low vibration in the air. She had never heard anything like it before. It wasn't from their ship's engines or any of the equipment. It was almost as if it was coming from deep space itself. "Can we trace it?" Imani asked. "I'm trying," Rahim replied, his fingers flying over the controls. "But it's odd. The signal isn't matching any known frequency. It's irregular." The sound continued, growing more intense, and now Imani could feel the vibrations in her chest. It was like the ship itself was alive, responding to something in the void. Rahim's screen suddenly flashed, showing a string of numbers and symbols that didn't make any sense to Imani. "What is that?" she asked, peering over his shoulder. "It looks like a code," Rahim said, "but it's not one we've ever seen. It might be a signal, but it's encrypted." Imani's mind raced. A mysterious signal coming from deep space. This could be the discovery of a lifetime. Or it could be something dangerous. They had encountered strange signals before, but none like this. None with such an odd pattern, as if someone, or something, was trying to communicate with them. "Get the crew together," Imani said, her voice firm. "We need to figure this out. If there's a message, we have to decode it." Rahim nodded, his hands moving quickly to send a message to the rest of the crew. Moments later, the ship's crew gathered in the briefing room. Commander Imani stood at the front, a serious look on her face. She could see the concern on their faces, each of them aware of how dangerous an unknown signal could be. "I just received a signal from deep space," Imani began. "It's not from any known source. Lieutenant Rahim is trying to decode it now, but I want all of you to be on alert. We don't know if this is a warning or a trap." The crew exchanged nervous glances. Their mission had been to explore new parts of space, but now it felt like they had stumbled into something far more dangerous. "Can we ignore it?" asked Ensign Liam, one of the junior crew members. "I mean, if it's that strange, maybe it's better not to mess with it." Imani shook her head. "We can't just ignore it. We've encountered odd signals before, but nothing like this. We need to find out who, or what, is sending it. This could be important for the future of humanity." The crew members nodded, their expressions turning serious. They were explorers, after all. They had been trained to deal with the unknown, even if it meant facing the unimaginable. "I'll need everyone to stay sharp," Imani continued. "We're going to move closer to the source of the signal. Rahim, keep working on decoding it. The rest of you, be ready for anything." With that, the crew returned to their stations. The hum from the signal seemed to grow louder as they prepared to change course. Imani sat back at the controls, her fingers hovering over the navigation panel. They were about to make a jump to the coordinates where the signal was coming from. "Ready when you are, Commander," Rahim said, his voice filled with both curiosity and fear. Imani hesitated for a moment, her eyes scanning the stars outside. This could be the breakthrough they had all been waiting for. But what if it wasn't? What if the signal wasn't a message of hope, but a warning. She took a deep breath, knowing there was no turning back. "Plot a course," Imani ordered. "Let's find out what's out there." The ship slowly began to change direction, heading deeper into the unknown. The hum continued to grow louder, and with each passing second, the crew's anticipation grew. What were they about to discover? And more importantly, was it something that would change the course of humanity forever? The journey to the unknown. The Seraphim moved steadily through the dark void of space, its engines humming quietly as they followed the new course. The mysterious signal continued to echo through the ship, its strange pattern now almost hypnotic. Commander Imani sat at the helm, her hand steady on the controls, but her mind was far from calm. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was out there, waiting for them. Something unknown. Lieutenant Rahim was busy at his station, his eyes scanning the data streams as he worked tirelessly to decode the strange signal. But it was no use. The code remained just as baffling as before. It didn't follow any known pattern or language. It seemed to be random. But Imani knew better than to ignore it. She had spent enough time in space to understand that nothing out here was ever truly random. "How's it going, Rahim?" Imani asked, her voice cutting through the quiet hum of the ship. Rahim looked up from his screen, his expression tense. "Still nothing. It's like it's meant to be a puzzle. I can't make any sense of it. But there's something strange. The frequency is changing. It's becoming stronger." Imani's heart skipped a beat. "Stronger? How? What do you mean?" "It's like the signal is getting closer to us," Rahim explained, his fingers moving swiftly over the controls. "It's like it's coming from a point in space, and we're heading right for it." The thought sent a shiver down Imani's spine. If the signal was indeed coming closer, it meant they were getting near its source. The closer they got, the more dangerous it could be. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. There was something eerie about the way the signal pulsed, almost like it was trying to reach them. Or was it calling them? "Keep trying, Rahim. We need answers," she said, her voice calm, though her mind was racing. As the hours passed, the crew remained on high alert. Everyone felt the tension in the air. It wasn't just the mysterious signal that was unnerving them, it was the unknown. No one knew what they would find when they reached the source. No one could predict if it would be a discovery that would change humanity's future, or if it would lead them to something far darker. Suddenly, the ship's warning system beeped, breaking the quiet atmosphere. A red light flashed on Imani's control panel, and a voice crackled over the comms. "Commander, we've picked up an anomaly," Ensign Lime reported. It's moving." Imani's pulse quickened. "What do you mean, it's moving?" Liam's voice was tight with uncertainty. "It's not just a signal anymore. There's something out there. Something physical. It's not like anything we've ever seen." Imani exchanged a worried glance with Rahim, who immediately began running a scan. The data on his screen flickered and shifted, the readings jumping erratically. "Can you get a visual on it?" Imani asked, her voice steady, though inside, she was anxious. "We're trying," Rahim replied, his voice strained. "But the interference from the signal is blocking our sensors. It's almost like whatever is out there is cloaked." "Cloaked," Imani repeated, raising an eyebrow. "Are you sure?" Rahim nodded. "It's possible. The signal itself is unlike anything we've encountered. It could be coming from a ship, but if it is, it's using technology we don't understand. And it's moving fast. Whatever it is, it's not staying still." Imani took a deep breath. "Then we need to catch up to it. Plot a new course. We can't let whatever this is get away." Rahim didn't hesitate. He quickly adjusted the ship's navigation, setting a new course to follow the anomaly. The crew braced themselves as the ship surged forward, the hum of the engines rising as they moved faster toward the source of the mysterious signal. Time seemed to stretch as they moved deeper into the unknown. The ship was growing closer to the anomaly, and the signal was growing louder, filling every corner of the ship. Imani could feel the tension rising in her chest, with every passing second. They were almost there. Suddenly, the signal stopped. The hum that had filled the air for so long went silent. The crew exchanged confused glances, unsure of what had just happened. The abrupt silence was deafening. For a moment, no one said anything. It felt like the entire universe had held its breath. Then, the ship's sensors went wild. "Commander," Rahim shouted, his voice filled with urgency. "The anomaly's gone. It's not there anymore." Imani's heart raced. "What do you mean, it's gone?" Rahim checked the readings again, his eyes wide with disbelief. "It's like it vanished. There's no trace of it anywhere. The signal is completely gone." Imani clenched her fists. This wasn't just a random encounter. Something was happening. Something that was beyond their understanding. And it wasn't over yet. "Stay alert," she ordered, her voice firm. "Whatever that was, it's not finished with us. And I have a feeling that we haven't seen the last of it." The crew fell silent, their nerves on edge. They had come so close, only to find that whatever was out there had vanished without a trace. But they all knew one thing: this was only the beginning. The silent encounter. The crew of the Seraphim sat in tense silence as they continued their journey through the vast expanse of space. The strange anomaly they had been tracking had disappeared, but the unease it left behind hung heavy in the air. Commander Imani stood at the helm, her eyes fixed on the viewscreen, watching the emptiness of space stretch out before her. Despite the silence, her mind was filled with questions. What had they just encountered? And why had it disappeared so suddenly? Lieutenant Rahim stood beside her, his fingers hovering over his console, still trying to make sense of the data. He had been working nonstop, trying to find any clue that could explain the anomaly, but there was nothing. The signal had vanished, and with it, any trace of its source. "I've run every diagnostic possible," Rahim muttered, his voice low with frustration. "But there's nothing. No radiation, no signs of energy flux. Nothing. It's like it was never there." Imani sighed, running a hand through her hair. "This isn't making any sense. If it was a ship, it should have left some kind of trace. But there's nothing." "Maybe it wasn't a ship," Rahim suggested, his eyes scanning the readings once more. "Maybe it's something else. Something we've never seen before." Imani turned to him, her brow furrowed. "You think it's something alien?" "I don't know," Rahim replied. "But whatever it wasn't human. And it's not like any technology we've encountered." As the silence stretched on, Imani's mind raced. She had always known space was full of mysteries, but this felt different. This wasn't just some unknown phenomenon. There was something deliberate about it, something designed. She had a sinking feeling in her gut that the crew had just stumbled upon something that humanity was not ready to face. The hum of the Seraphim's engines seemed louder in the quiet of the control room, and the flicker of the lights felt almost oppressive. Imani could feel her pulse quicken. There was something out there, something they were meant to find, but at what cost? Suddenly, the comms system crackled to life. "Commander," the voice of Ensign Liam came through. "You're going to want to see this." Imani's heart skipped a beat. "What is it, Liam?" "Just come to the observation deck," Liam said urgently. "You need to see it for yourself." Without another word, Imani made her way to the observation deck, her boots echoing in the quiet halls of the ship. As she entered the room, she was met by the anxious faces of the crew. They were all staring at the viewscreen, their eyes wide with shock. "What's going on?" Imani asked, her voice steady, though her heart was pounding in her chest. "Look," Rahim said, pointing to the screen. His voice was tense with disbelief. Imani's gaze followed his finger, and for a moment, she couldn't believe what she was seeing. In the distance, a massive shape was looming in space. It wasn't a ship. It didn't look like anything they had ever seen before. It was dark, almost blending with the void of space, and its structure was organic. It didn't have the sharp mechanical lines of a ship. Instead, It seemed to pulse and breathe, like some giant creature lurking in the dark. "What? What is that?" Imani whispered, her voice barely audible. "I don't know," Rahim admitted, his eyes locked on the screen. "But whatever it is, it's massive. And it's getting closer." The crew watched in stunned silence as the mysterious object slowly moved toward them. It wasn't like anything they had ever encountered. Its shape seemed to shift, as though it was alive, and the closer it came, the more it seemed to radiate an eerie energy. "Can we get a better scan on it?" Imani asked, trying to regain some semblance of control. Rahim was already working at his console, his fingers flying over the keys. "I'm trying, Commander, but the signal interference is still there. It's almost like it's blocking our scans." Imani's heart sank. If the object was capable of blocking their scans, it meant it was far more advanced than anything humanity had ever encountered. And if it was coming towards them, what did it want? Suddenly, the ship's warning system beeped, breaking the tense silence. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission," Ensign Liam said, his voice shaky. Imani's eyes widened. "A transmission? From who?" Liam didn't answer immediately. He was staring at his screen, his face pale. "It's not from anyone I can recognize. The signal's strange. It's not in any known language." Imani's stomach twisted. "Put it on." The voice that came through the speakers was chilling. It wasn't in any language they understood, but the tone was unmistakable. It was cold, distant, and filled with a sense of authority. The crew exchanged uneasy glances as the voice echoed through the room, its meaning unclear, but its intent unmistakable. "Prepare," the voice said, "for what you are about to face." Imani's breath caught in her throat. Whatever was out there, it wasn't just a random anomaly. It had been waiting for them. And now, it was ready to make its move. The encounter. The atmosphere aboard the Seraphim had changed. The once peaceful hum of the ship's systems now felt heavy, like the air itself was thick with fear. The crew huddled together in the observation deck, their faces drawn with unease. No one spoke as they watched the mysterious object slowly approach, its eerie shape growing larger and clearer with every passing moment. It was like a living nightmare, a thing from the deep darkness of space, and it had no intention of leaving them alone. Commander Imani stood at the front, trying to hold her composure. Her hands were tense, gripping the edge of the console as the crew worked in silence around her. They had no idea what was coming next, and that made it even worse. "We need to make contact," she said finally, her voice calm but firm. "We can't just sit here and wait for it to decide what it wants." Lieutenant Rahim quickly adjusted the ship's communication settings, trying to make sense of the strange transmission. But no matter what he tried, the words from the mysterious voice still echoed through the speakers, foreign and unsettling. "Prepare," the voice had said, "for what you are about to face." "Commander, we're not getting any clearer signals," Rahim said, looking at his console with frustration. "The transmission is being scrambled, and the interference is growing stronger. Whatever this is, it's blocking our systems on purpose." Imani's stomach twisted with worry. "We're not prepared for this. We don't know what we're up against." As the mysterious object moved closer, the ship's warning systems started beeping and the lights flickered. The crew looked around, anxiety growing. Suddenly, the ship shook, a violent tremor that rattled everyone in their seats. Imani's heart leaped in her chest as she grabbed the nearest support bar to steady herself. "Report," she ordered, her voice cutting through the panic. "Shields are holding," Rahim replied, his voice tight. "But there's something coming through. It's like a signal wave, and it's getting stronger by the second." Before Imani could respond, the ship rocked again. This time, the shaking was stronger, more violent. The crew struggled to stay upright as alarms blared throughout the ship. Then, as suddenly as it had started, the shaking stopped. The silence that followed was deafening. Imani's breath was shallow as she stared at the view screen. The object was now impossibly close, so close that it filled the screen entirely. She could see details now, things she hadn't noticed before. The surface of the object was pulsating, like it was alive, shifting and changing in ways that didn't make sense. And as it hovered there, just outside the ship, Imani felt an overwhelming sense of dread wash over her. "Commander, look!" Ensign Liam shouted, pointing at the screen. A flicker appeared in the corner of the screen, barely visible at first, but growing rapidly. It was a beam of light, sharp, focused, and shining directly at the Seraphim. It wasn't a laser. It was something different, something strange. The light seemed to hum with energy, a low, almost rhythmic vibration that could be felt in the bones. "Brace for impact," Imani shouted. But before the crew could react, the beam hit. It wasn't like anything they had ever experienced. The Seraphim didn't explode. There was no massive force throwing the crew across the room. Instead, it was as if the ship itself was being absorbed. The walls flickered, and the metal groaned, like the very structure of the ship was being pulled apart at the molecular level. The crew scrambled, panic setting in as they tried to understand what was happening. Imani gripped her console, trying to focus, trying to think clearly. She had no idea what kind of technology could do this, what kind of force they were dealing with. But one thing was clear: they weren't in control anymore. "We need to fight back," Lieutenant Rahim shouted, looking desperately at his console. "We can't just sit here and take this." "I don't know if we have a choice," Imani replied, her voice tense. "This is beyond anything we've ever dealt with." Another pulse of energy struck the ship, stronger this time, and the entire room seemed to bend and warp. The crew screamed, but their voices were drowned out by the roar of the power surging through the ship. And then, just as quickly as it had started, the light from the object vanished. The ship was still. The alarms had stopped. The lights were dim, flickering as if the power was struggling to keep up. Imani's heart was racing, and she could barely breathe, but the worst part was the silence. The eerie, crushing silence that followed the chaos. "Is it over?" Rahim asked, his voice barely a whisper. Imani didn't answer immediately. She was staring at the screen, her mind racing. What had just happened? What kind of entity could cause this kind of destruction without even touching them? And most importantly, why had it stopped? She didn't have an answer, but one thing was certain: they were no longer in control of their fate. The truth was out there, and it was darker than anything they could have imagined. The truth unveiled. The silence was suffocating. After the terrifying encounter with the mysterious object, the crew of the Seraphim sat in a stunned daze. They had been shaken to their core. Their understanding of the universe suddenly turned upside down. The ship's systems were glitching, flickering on and off, and no one knew whether they were still safe or if the worst was yet to come. Commander Imani was the first to break the silence. She stood up slowly, her eyes scanning the dimly lit control room. Her heart was still pounding, but she knew there was no time to waste. They had to understand what had happened, and they had to find a way to survive. "Rahim," she called, her voice steady but tinged with uncertainty. "What do we know about that object? Is it still there?" Lieutenant Rahim worked quickly, trying to stabilize the ship's systems. His hands moved across the console, but his face remained grim. "It's gone, Commander," he said after a moment. "The object disappeared. It's like it vanished into thin air. I've checked every system, but there's no trace of it left." "Just like that?" Imani asked, her brow furrowing. "It didn't even leave a signal behind?" Rahim nodded. "Nothing. It's like it was never here." Imani didn't like that. The entire situation felt off. That kind of power, that level of technology, it didn't just disappear. Someone, or something, was toying with them, and they had no idea why. The crew began to gather around her, their faces a mixture of fear and confusion. No one knew what to say. They had faced a force far beyond anything they could comprehend. They had no weapons, no defense, and no understanding of what had just happened. "Commander," Ensign Liam spoke up, his voice low but urgent. "There's something else. I found something in the data logs." Imani turned toward him. "What do you mean?" Liam hesitated, then stepped forward. "The transmission we received earlier, it wasn't just a random signal. It was directed at us. At our ship." The room fell silent again, the implications of his words sinking in. "Directed at us," Imani repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. "But why us? Who would want to contact the Seraphim?" Liam looked uneasy, but he continued. "That's not all. The signal wasn't just scrambled, it was encoded. I've been running it through decryption algorithms, and I managed to pull some of it apart. What I found, it's not human. The language, the structure, none of it is anything we've ever seen before." The crew exchanged nervous glances. There was no way to ignore what Liam was saying. This wasn't just a random encounter. This was planned. Someone, or something, had been watching them. And now, they had to face the truth. "Show me," Imani commanded. Liam worked quickly, pulling up a holographic display that filled the room. Strange symbols appeared, dancing across the screen in a pattern Imani couldn't begin to understand. The symbols were alien. There was no question about it. "This is a warning," Liam continued, his voice tight. "A message sent to us. It says that we're being washed. That Earth is being washed." Imani's heart skipped a beat. "Earth? What do you mean?" Liam's fingers hovered over the screen, highlighting certain words. "The message says that we are on the radar of an ancient civilization, one that has been observing Earth for a long time. They believe humanity is a threat, and it's not just because of our weapons or our wars. They see something in us that they fear, something in our nature." A chill ran down Imani's spine as she took in the words on the screen. The realization hit her like a ton of bricks. The mysterious object, the strange signal, the terrifying energy. It wasn't random. It was a warning from a power that saw humanity as a danger. They weren't being protected. They were being watched, studied, and potentially marked for something far worse. "Are we ready to face whatever this is?" Rahim asked, his voice shaky. Imani looked at her crew. They were scared, just like her. They had no answers, only questions. But one thing was clear. They were caught in something far bigger than they had ever imagined. The galaxy, it seemed, was full of dangers, and humanity was at the center of it all. "We don't have a choice," Imani said, her voice firm despite the fear coursing through her. "Whatever's out there, we have to face it. For Earth, for humanity." But deep down, she knew they weren't prepared for what was coming. The truth was darker than any of them had realized. And the galaxy's boogeymen weren't just myths. They were real. And they were coming. The encounter. The Seraphim drifted through the dark void of space, its crew more on edge than ever before. The warning they had received was like a weight around their necks, growing heavier with each passing hour. The mysterious alien civilization had been watching Earth, and now they had set their sights on the Seraphim. No one knew what the next move would be, but they all knew it wouldn't be good. Commander Imani sat in the cockpit, staring at the stars outside. She wasn't sure whether to feel hopeful or terrified. Every time she thought she had a handle on the situation, something new seemed to come out of the darkness. She couldn't shake the feeling that the galaxy, with all its beauty, was hiding a far darker truth. "Commander, we've picked up something." Rahim's voice broke through her thoughts. Imani turned sharply, her heart racing. "What is it?" "It's a ship," he said. "It's not responding to our communications, but it's definitely out there. It matches the signature of the object we encountered earlier." Imani's pulse quickened. This was it, the moment they'd been waiting for, the moment they'd been dreading. "How far?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Less than 20 clicks. It's closing in." Imani stood up, her hands clenched into fists. "Get us in range. We need to know what we're dealing with." The crew moved quickly, securing their positions. Ensign Liam was already working furiously at his console, trying to scan the ship for any signs of activity. But there was nothing. No life signs, no signals. Just a dark, silent vessel moving closer with each passing second. As the unknown ship drew nearer, the tension in the control room reached a breaking point. Everyone was on edge. The sense of danger was palpable, thick enough to cut through. "Commander," Liam said, his voice barely audible, "I'm getting something. It's faint, but it's a signal, encoded, just like before." Imani's stomach churned. She nodded, urging him to continue. "The message, it's almost identical to the one we decoded earlier." Liam continued, his face pale. "But this one says, it says we're too late." "Too late?" Rahim asked, his voice tight. "Too late for what?" Liam didn't have an answer. But before he could speak, a loud bang echoed through the ship. The lights flickered. A violent shudder ran through the Seraphim, throwing everyone off balance. Panic erupted in the control room as alarms began to blare. "What the hell was that?" Imani shouted. "We've been hit," Rahim yelled, scrambling to assess the damage. "Shields are down to 40%. We got a breach in the aft section." Imani's mind raced. They couldn't afford to be caught off guard like this. They had to act. But before she could give any orders, the ship was hit again, this time harder. The lights flickered and went out completely. Darkness engulfed the control room, followed by the soft hum of the backup power systems. "We're losing control," Rahim shouted. Then, without warning, the ship's sensors began to flicker back to life. A new signal, much stronger than before, appeared on the screens. Imani's breath caught in her throat as she saw what it was, a massive, shadowy shape that appeared to be approaching them fast. "It's them," Liam whispered, his voice full of fear. "They found us." The Mani felt her blood run cold. The ship wasn't just closing in. It was going to collide with them. If they didn't do something fast, they would be caught in the grasp of an unknown enemy, one that had no mercy for Earth's defenders. "Brace for impact," she shouted, though she knew it was too late to avoid what was coming. The Seraphim rocked again as the alien ship grew closer. The eerie silence from their opponent was unsettling. There was no communication, no warning, just the cold inevitability of the looming threat. And just as they were about to lose all hope, something strange happened. The unknown ship stopped. It hovered in place, less than 100 meters away, its shape now clearly visible against the starry backdrop. Imani stared at the screen, her heart pounding. The alien vessel was unlike anything they had ever seen, sleek, angular, with strange symbols carved into its surface. It almost looked ancient, as if it had traveled across the galaxy for eons. "Why did they stop?" Rahim asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. "I don't know," Imani replied. "But we're not out of danger yet." The crew held their breath, waiting for what would happen next. The silence between the two ships stretched on. And then, the unexpected happened. A voice echoed through the Seraphim's communication system. It was distorted, like it was coming from a different time or space. "Humanity's final test begins now," the voice said, cold and commanding. "You have been warned." Imani's blood ran cold as the voice faded, leaving nothing but a chilling silence in its wake. She knew they weren't just dealing with an alien race anymore. They were dealing with a force that saw humanity as a threat, and whatever it was here to deliver a message they couldn't ignore. The final choice. The Seraphim hung in space, its systems barely holding together after the attack. The crew, shaken and exhausted, had no idea what was coming next. The alien ship, massive and silent, loomed nearby, casting an eerie shadow over the battered human vessel. The words of the mysterious voice still echoed in Imani's mind. "Humanity's final test begins now." Imani paced back and forth in the control room, her mind racing. She glanced over at Rahim, who was trying to stabilize the ship's failing systems. The damage was extensive, but not beyond repair, at least for now. "We can't keep this up forever," Rahim muttered, wiping sweat from his brow as he worked. "Whatever they're planning, we're running out of time." Imani nodded grimly. She had to act, but she wasn't sure what the right move was. They had been attacked, threatened, and now they were being forced to make a choice that would decide humanity's fate. The alien ship hadn't made a move since its initial attack, and yet the feeling of impending doom was suffocating. Every moment that passed felt like a countdown. Imani's mind kept returning to the cryptic warning from the alien vessel. Humanity's final test. What did it mean? Was this truly a test? Or was it something more sinister? "Commander," Liam called out from his station, his voice trembling. "I'm picking up another signal. This one's different. It's coming from the alien ship." Imani turned to him quickly. "What kind of signal?" "It's not a distress signal," Liam said, narrowing his eyes. "It's more like an invitation." Imani's heart skipped a beat. An invitation from an alien species that had just attacked them. The idea seemed impossible, but everything about this encounter had been impossible. She approached Liam's station and peered at the data. On the screen, a series of symbols appeared, strange, alien characters that shifted and morphed in patterns that were hypnotic to the eye. Then the symbols rearranged into a message in human language. "You have two choices, humans. Surrender or face extinction." The room fell silent. "Surrender?" Rahim asked, his voice low and incredulous. "To them." Imani felt her stomach twist. Surrender wasn't an option, not for her, not for humanity. But what would the consequences be if they refused? They were facing an enemy unlike anything they had ever imagined. And if they chose to fight, there was a real chance that Earth would be wiped from the galaxy forever. "We don't have much of a choice," Rahim continued, his voice filled with frustration. "If we fight, we're finished. If we surrender, we're enslaved." Imani turned away from the screen, her mind swirling with thoughts. She could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on her, heavier than any weight she had ever carried in her career as a commander. She glanced at her crew. They were all waiting for her to make a choice, to give them direction. Imani took a deep breath. She knew that this moment would define humanity's future. The test, the final test, had already begun. But would humanity survive it? "Commander," Liam asked softly. Imani stood tall and faced her crew, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. "We won't surrender," she said firmly. "We fight for Earth. We fight for humanity's survival." Rahim nodded, determination flashing in his eyes. "Then we'll make them regret underestimating us." Imani turned to the ship's control panel. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers. Let's show them that humanity doesn't bow down to anyone." Just as she gave the order, the alien ship moved again. Slowly, with terrifying precision, it inched closer, its weapons aimed at the Seraphim. The moment of choice had passed. There was no turning back now. Suddenly, a new message flashed on the screen. This one from the alien ship, but it was different. It was not a threat. It was a challenge. "If you refuse to surrender, then prove your worth. The final test begins now." Imani's grip tightened around the console. She knew that this wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about showing the galaxy that humanity was no longer just a small, insignificant planet. They were a force to be reckoned with. "Prepare for battle," Imani ordered. The crew moved quickly, each person taking their station, readying themselves for the battle ahead. The Seraphim powered up, its remaining shields sparking to life. The alien ship continued its ominous approach, its weapons glowing with a deadly energy. Imani watched as the two ships, human and alien, faced off in the cold void of space. This was it. The test. The final choice. And only one side would emerge victorious. With a deep breath, Amani gave the signal. Let's show them what humanity is made of.